These are the last three problems on the practice test for Algebra B, Test 4, Quarter 2. So the fourth problem is another mixture problem. And the only difference with this problem is that it is set up a little different. Instead of percents, we have a rate that is in dollars per pound. And so again, we set this up the same way though. And so we've got part 1. And so remember, mixture problems, we've got two parts. We're mixing these two parts together, and they make a final product, which we'll call the mix. And so up top, though, we end up with a different category, because typically we'd say we'd have an amount of solution. Well, we don't have a solution here. We have a product of weight, and so that's what we're going to end up having in this case. We have an amount of weight. And specifically, that weight is in pounds. So I'll use LB for pounds. So that's part of it. And then we're multiplying this by, instead of a percent, it is in dollars per pound. So notice that this is a rate right here, $2.30 per pound. Per means that we've got that division sign. And so we go ahead and multiply these. Well, the pounds will end up canceling, so we're going to end up with a cost. And that cost will be in dollars. So now we've got our chart set up. We go ahead and substitute these numbers in. So our part number 1, it says how many pounds, right there, they tell us what goes in place of the amount of weight. How many? We don't know. Let's put our variable there, right there. That's where it goes. X. How many pounds of gourmet candy selling for $1.80 per pound? That is our rate. So I'll just put in 1.8. Don't need that extra zero. Multiply that stuff out, I get 1.8x. All right, part 2, we're on to it. Should be mixed with. Mixed with means that that's the second part. 5 pounds. We know the amount of weight right there. They tell us 5 pounds. Of candy selling for $2.80 per pound. So times by 2.8. And then we go ahead and multiply this stuff. And that will give us an even 14. So $14 is what that costs. And then they ask to obtain. To obtain means this is the final mix. When you see that obtain, that is our final product, our mix. And it's selling for $2.38. Or $2.30 even. Okay. So now we just need to figure out how much weight. Well, these are the two parts. They add together to make the mix. So it's going to be an expression, x plus 5. Always put any expression you have in parentheses and then multiply. So we're going to get that 2.3x and then plus, and 2.3 times by the 5 gives us 11.5. So just like before, we're going to take the cost of these two. This is cost of part 1, cost of part 2. They add together to make the final cost. And then from there we'll be able to solve because we'll just have one unknown. So it's just going to be 1.8x plus 14 equals 2.3x plus 11.5. And then from there we're ready to solve. We'll just do some opposite operations, isolate the variable. So let's go ahead and bring the variables over to the right-hand side this time. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract that 1.8x from both sides, and I'll subtract that 11.5. Now here's where you have to be really careful if we're dealing with decimals. See, we have decimals that need to line up, and I need to add a placeholder in there, otherwise I'll make an error. And so when we do this, we end up having to borrow from both, and we end up with a 0.5x, and this all equals, and I go to do that math, I end up with 2.5. 2.5 is that answer. So now I'm ready to do some division, and I'll do that division there. And then remember, when you're dividing by the decimals, we need to move that decimal point over one space. And so we do that on both sides. And we really only have to do 25 over 5, which just gives me 5. So there it is. X equals 5. Well, what's x? X is weight. It tells us right in here. That's why we put headings here, so we can figure out what our variables represent. 5 pounds of candy selling for $1.80 per pound. Well, the last two problems are just going to be systems. They're going to be two systems in which we'll use two different methods. And it doesn't specify the methods, but I would follow what we typically do. So when we have a variable by itself, like here y is by itself, use substitution. Take that x plus 3, put it in for y. It's the faster method. See, because otherwise you'd have to line terms up, move terms around. You might make errors that way. So use that substitution method. 2x plus, and then in place of the y, let's put this expression, x plus 3. And this all equals 6. So we go ahead and do some work there. Combine some like terms, do an opposite operation, isolate the variables. So we'll collect these two terms. They're the same sign. So we got 3x equals 3. You do that division of 3, and you've got x. But that's not the only answer. Last test I saw some people just leave the answer like that, and they lost some points because they're not finding y. And it's an easy process. All you do is take that 1 and you just put it back in for x, and then you get your answer. So y equals 1 plus 3, which is 4. There it is. 1 comma 4. That is the answer. Well, one more problem, and this next one is a good one for elimination. Elimination because, you see, we don't have a variable by itself. You could get x by itself and use substitution. That's fine by me. But elimination will work faster, and I think you'll make less errors with it as well, because everything's lined up and it's set up for it. The only thing we have to do is be able to add these equations to get something to cancel. So I'm going to take this top equation and multiply it by 3. See, 3 times that negative y is going to make a negative 3y, and we can get those to cancel, those y's to cancel. So what do I have? I got 3x minus 3y equals negative 9. Down below I got 5x, I got a plus 3y, and this all equals 1. So I go ahead and add that stuff together, and let's see what we get left over. Well, the y's are canceling, but we have some x's. We got 8x. Again, these are gone. This all equals negative 8. And so we do that division of 8, and we get our answer. X is equal to negative 1. Well, that's only one answer. Again, you got to find both, so we still have to use substitution with this elimination method. So I'm going to take that 1, or negative 1, and put it in for x, that top equation. So negative 1 minus y equals negative 3. You do some work there, add that 1 to both sides, and we are almost there. Minus y equals negative 2. Divide by negative 1, and we've got it. Y is 2. So there's our answer, negative 1, comma 2. So those are the problems you're going to see on the test. And there's a bunch of problems on the back side to practice.